Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to QC Live, the show where I talk to you guys for about an hour about what's going on with the Cleveland Browns and Cleveland sports, period. We got a lot to talk about. Myles Garrett requested a trade last week. We've been, 2 weeks into the Myles Garrett requested trade fiasco. There's no end in sight. And now we have gotten enough time for people to chime in with not only takes about why Myles is available or if Myles is justified in wanting to go, but also takes about what the Browns should expect in trade compensation for Myles Garrett. Now, this goes without being said. Any conversation about Myles Garrett being traded this offseason has to also factor in the financial penalty that the Cleveland Browns will incur for trading Myles Garrett this offseason. And it is not a minor penalty that the Browns would incur. If they trade him before June 1st, they would have $36 million in dead cap. You can offset some of that $36 million in dead cap with what you would be losing in like not having to pay him anymore any of his base salary. And that would bring the total cap loss to like $16.4 million. If you do it post June 1st, it reduces to about 5 this year and 14 this year, and then you lose some dead cap over the next year. But that's not nothing. The Browns need to be compensated for that, right? The Browns need to be compensated for potentially losing that financial value there, right? We're talking about 30-something million dollars. That is a significant chunk of cap. That is a significant amount of money. The Browns are not in a position where they could just dead cap stuff willy-nilly. So they're going to need to be compensated fairly, or within the compensation for Myles Garrett, they're going to have to be some kind of accommodation to be able to lighten the burden for the Cleveland Browns financially. That is the first thing you have to consider with the Myles trades. Not just that we're trading this incredibly valuable player. It's also that you're trading this incredibly valuable player at an enormous financial cost to the Cleveland Browns, which to me, and somebody said we could just flip him for another player. And it's like, yeah, the problem with that, though, is that you would still have to eat the dead cap for Myles this year, and then you'll get that player. So it's not even an even flip. Let's say you do trade him, right? Somebody in the chat just mentioned Micah Parsons, right? You trade him for Micah Parsons. Well, you're still going to have to incur the dead money for trading Myles. And then you're going to take on the new contract of whoever you bring in. That is still going to be more expensive than just having Myles Garrett. So, again, any solution, any trade that the Browns have or the Browns do, they're going to have to factor that part in. They're absolutely going to have to factor that part in. I don't see enough people. I think Brad Ward's talked about how people don't really factor that part in. So that's one thing, right? Two, if you're the Browns and you want to trade Myles Garrett, if you're a team and you want to trade for Myles Garrett, I would say this year's Super Bowl is something that could help the Cleveland Browns in the long run. Because what this year's Super Bowl proved, and it's not the first time it's been proved, is that a great defense can really do a lot to elevate a team. And we saw it with Philadelphia. They had that great defense that was able to dominate the line of scrimmage against Patrick Mahomes. And Patrick Mahomes, because of that great defense, did not look like Pat Mahomes, which allowed the Eagles to win that game because offensively, they did not have to deal with the burden of the points that the Kansas City Chiefs were putting up. If you're a team that has not been able to get past the very real hump that is the Kansas City Chiefs and Pat Mahomes, you might look at Myles Garrett as your solution to that. right? If you are Buffalo and you've been eliminated by the Kansas City Chiefs for like 5 years in a row, and you're looking for a fix to finally get out of the round, Myles Garrett might be your last chance, desperation, let's do it move. And when it's that kind of desperation, I heard people in the chat talking about the Browns getting a Godfather deal. Well, that's how you get a Godfather deal, right? You get a Godfather deal because the team feels like if I just get this one guy, this one player, it will finally win me that one damn game I need to win. And Myles Garrett could be sold as a solution for those teams. Now, the problem with that is that those are the teams that are going to be willing to go crazy for Myles Garrett. A lot of those teams don't have a ton of assets. Buffalo, not a ton of assets. Baltimore, not a ton of assets, right? Like the teams in the AFC that have consistently not been able to get over the hump, we can think of two. Those are the teams that will be most desperate. One of them's in your division. The other one's Buffalo. Buffalo doesn't have the assets. Baltimore doesn't have the assets either. Even if they did, they're in division. I doubt the Browns trade Myles Garrett in division. There are other teams that you could make the argument that would do something like that, but I don't think those teams are so close that they would fall into the category of like, hey, we just need this one thing, right? Like I've heard people bring up Dallas. There's no way Dallas is that close, right? I don't think Dallas is that close. I heard people bring up Chicago. That's hilarious. New England, not close at all. Like a lot of the teams people bring up, they're not that close. Why would they be this desperate? It's going to take a team to give you the offer for Myles Garrett to be really desperate. So Buffalo is a team there. Another team I think could fool themselves into thinking they're one player away is the Houston Texans. And that, ladies and gentlemen, the Houston Texans, I haven't heard anybody bring up the Houston Texans. That's the scenario that I find a bit intriguing. Ian, if you could bring up my screen grab, well, my screen here, the Over the Cap page. Yes, thank you. All right. So with Buffalo, they don't have a ton of assets. They have two second-round picks in 2025 and pick 30. So everything they can offer you, right, is basically second-round picks. When it comes to young players that might be beneficial to you, they're not going to trade you Josh Allen. That would defeat the whole purpose. Other than Josh Allen, James Cook, you're not going to take James Cook, a running back, in exchange for Myles Garrett. They don't have a ton here. So I don't think Buffalo has a package or can put together a package that would be interesting. But let's go to an old familiar trade partner, the Houston Texans. Where are they at? Houston Texans. T. Am I tripping? Okay, right here below Steelers. It's not in alphabetical order. Let's go to the Houston Texans, right? Now, Houston's a little bit interesting. Draft-wise, they don't have a ton of assets, but what they do have is young players. Now, chat, how would you feel about Myles Garrett being swapped for Will Anderson and a first next year and a fourth next year? Where's Will? They are really killing me by not having this in alphabetical order. How would y'all feel about that? Someone said the Raiders are ideal. Again, you got to think about it this way. Who's going to be motivated enough to give you that crazy package? Why in the world would the Raiders be motivated enough to give you a crazy package for Myles Garrett when they are decades away from winning? There you go. Will Anderson Jr., a first next year, and a fourth next year. Would you do it? Why would the Texans do this? They might think that upgrading their defensive line just a little bit might be enough. Now, maybe you say, hey, if the Texans trade for Myles Garrett, They want to keep Will Anderson. Okay, cool. They have Derek Stingley Jr. Would you do this? I'm going to let y'all think about that real quick. I got to go get a tissue. Again, the thought process here for the Texans, hey, we need to have a defensive line that can disrupt Kansas City, just like Philadelphia did. And the thought process for the Browns, we get a first next year, we get a fourth next year, and yes, we're losing our generational edge player, but we're picking up another corner to pair alongside with Denzel Ward, and we'll have the number 2 overall pick. We could draft Abdul Carter, and we can walk out still with a really good defense that can compete now, but also getting younger. You get an extra first for next year. If that becomes used for a quarterback, maybe you want to use 2 on quarterback this year, but you get an extra pick for next year. You get some extra selections, or maybe you can even turn Derek Stingley into another pick. Again, I want to make it clear. I am on team just don't trade him. It's very hard to get a trade that would make sense. Now, what if the Texans were super desperate and the Texans were willing to do something like bring on Deshaun Watson, right? They take that contract off our heads, give us the same offer. Does that become more appealing to you? Myles Garrett is such a valuable player that in order for the Browns to feel like, hey, this is worth moving, especially with the financial penalty we would incur, the deal has to be outrageous. I know people are like, oh, that's an outrageous deal. You're not going to trade Myles Garrett for anything reasonable this offseason. I hope you guys understand that. And if the Browns do trade Myles Garrett for anything reasonable this offseason, then everybody's going to get fired. That's a horrible idea. But if we go to the cap, if we're wondering, hey, does this even work in the salary cap if we do it? How would the Browns make this work? Let's look at this from the Browns' perspective first, right? If they trade, let's go to the calculator. If they trade Deshaun Watson, so trade pre-June 1st, they would eat 80 in dead cap, but it would be a $7 million penalty in salary cap space this year. So it'd be up from 30 to 37. And then you trade Myles, it would be a massive dead cap number this year, but a $16 million hit in your salary cap. How would you make up for this? Well, first you would restructure guys like Denzel Ward. That saves $9 million. Maybe you want to work a restructure out with Jack Conklin. Maybe you just want to outright cut Jack Conklin, right? You can restructure him, save $9 million on the cap this year, or you can cut Jack Conklin post June 1st and save $14 million on the cap. Let's say you traded Myles Garrett, so you're rebuilding. Let's cut Jack Conklin, right? So that's $14 million right there. Joe Bitonio, you would either work a restructure out, save $4 million, or you would just outright cut him, which would save $8 million. Let's say you're rebuilding, he retires, you work a deal out, you save some money there. Boom. All right. Then you would look at the bottom end of your roster to make some of these savings, right? You can do a pretty easy move here, cut Jerome Ford. That saves $3 million. You could cut, who are some of these guys? DTR. You're going to keep Isaiah McGuire, Pierre Strong, Sam Kamara gone. You would keep these 2. Ellerson Smith gone. Miles Harden gone. Troy Hairston gone. And then you would keep Jawan Briggs, Rex Sinahar gone. All right, so now we're down to $11 million. So if you want to get under the cap, you'll probably hit a restructure here. You could trade Greg Newsome. If you trade Greg Newsome, that frees up $13 million in space. Jed's gone. You can restructure David Njoku and save nothing. You can trade David Njoku and lose 9, but some money over next year. Given that if you trade Deshaun Watson in his package, your 2026 cap jumps up significantly. It makes doing anything to save money in 2026 a pointless deal. You could do something like that, right? Now let's switch over to the Texans side of things. Could they make this work financially? Again, this is all hypothetical. But could the Texans make this work financially, right? They bring on Myles Garrett. So let's add Myles Garrett to the team. That's who they want. Cool. They bring on Deshaun Watson. They don't really want Deshaun, but they're willing to eat Deshaun to lower the price a little bit on the trade or to make Cleveland want to do the trade. So they bring on Deshaun. Now they're $49 million over the cap. How would they afford it? They would hit a restructure. They would hit another restructure. They would hit another restructure. They would hit another restructure here with Nico Collins. Stephon Diggs is a free agent. Shaq Mason, they could hit another restructure here. And just like that, without losing anybody, they're under the cap. It would be a hilarious outcome. If the Houston Texans are like, all right, we'll take him back. Even though he has an open lawsuit against us. We'll take him back because we want Myles Garrett that bad. Myles gets to go to a contender. The Cleveland Browns get Derek Stingley, a first-round pick next year, and a fourth-round pick next year. So you get Myles for a player in a first and a fourth, which is under the price tag of what most people are saying. You just got to eat Deshaun's contract. And that would also solve the Browns' money concerns because that would make the Browns like $200 million under the cap for 2026. And it would pretty much erase any consequence of the Watson trade. Why would we cut Ford? Because you have one of the deepest running back classes in the NFL this year. Jerome Ford's going to cost you $3 million to roster. I think it's a pretty easy deal there. You would cut Jerome Ford, save the $3 million because you're going to draft two. I would draft 2 running backs. And that's how you make room for it. You save money, you get younger, you get cheaper at running back. That's why I would cut Jerome. But that's one way this thing could work out. Maybe the Texans give them a call. Again, when you're talking about teams that would trade for Myles Garrett, you're talking about a team that is willing to trade away their future to have a chance to win a championship next year. These have to be teams that feel like they are this close, right? Again, a lot of the teams I've heard be brought up, I feel like they're very hopeful names. You know, I've heard the Patriots be brought up. I feel like that's very hopeful. The Raiders be brought up. That's hopeful. Jacksonville be brought up. That's hopeful. The Chicago Bears be brought up. That's hopeful. But why would those teams trade for Myles Garrett given that he's 30 if they're not trying to win right now? Why would they trade the future for a player who's 30 if they're not trying to win right now? Not trying to get significantly better, but trying to win right now. I don't think those teams are very likely. That's just my read on it. I could be wrong here. But I think the teams that would be willing to do this are the teams that feel like, man, if we just get this one thing better, it changes everything. And I think the 2 teams you have that can make that argument are Houston, not because they're that close, but just because they have the assets and they're in a position where they're going to win their division for a very long time. And they're 2-time divisional round guys, right? They got eliminated by Pat Mahomes. They got eliminated by Lamar Jackson. Maybe they're thinking, hey, we got to get something to put us on even ground with these franchise quarterbacks. Let's go ahead, get a monster like Myles to neutralize them. Or Buffalo, because Buffalo has been running up that Kansas City wall for a very, very long time. I think that is what a lot of trade scenarios are missing, is understanding the motivation for a team to trade for Myles Garrett. Because it's easy for me to sit in this chair and be like, oh, yeah, this team would trade for Myles Garrett. He's Myles Garrett. But what would motivate somebody to give a crazy offer? That's what would motivate somebody to get a crazy offer, is they feel like they're that close. right? That's what motivated the Browns to give that crazy offer to Deshaun Watson. They thought they were this close to being Super Bowl contenders. They were just a quarterback away. So they gave up all them first. They gave up $230 million guaranteed because they thought that Deshaun Watson was going to solve that problem. I'm not saying it's a good strategy. I'm saying this is when you can get a great haul, is when teams believe that all their problems can be solved, or you could sell it to them that all their problems can be solved if you just give them this one player. And those are the two teams that are in that position. Like, I don't think the intention is to send him to a contending team, but the fact is that a contending team is going to be the only team that's willing to spend crazy for him. If Myles were 27 and requesting a trade, everybody would be interested. But at 30, you're going to get those teams who feel like they just need that one last piece to put them over the top. And those teams will be willing to spend whatever to get it done if they thought it meant that it gets them past Patrick Mahomes. So that's something to think about with the Myles stuff. Ian, could you do me a favor? I have some trade scenarios that I've sourced from social media. So I have some trade scenarios that I've sourced from social media that I want to react to live in front of everybody. Surprise me with whichever one pops up and we'll talk about it. All right. This one comes from Snowstorm, who says Myles and a 2025 third to Detroit. So we're sending a third over and Myles Garrett for Detroit's 2025 and 2026 first, a 2026 fifth, and Hendon Hooker. I don't really know if I want Hendon Hooker in this deal. Like, I would rather just get another day 3 pick versus getting Hendon Hooker. I don't think I have very much use for Hendon Hooker here. But having to trade Myles in a third, so we're basically, trading up from 3 to 1. It's not a crazy enough deal, in my opinion, to justify going through everything you're going to have to go through that includes trading Myles Garrett. So it's not worth the cap ramifications. It's not worth the talent penalty that you would have. I don't think you can make up that talent penalty with 2 late first and a late fifth in Hendon Hooker. I don't think you even come close, especially if I'm sending out a 3rd round pick this year. I think it also cost me an opportunity because I think you can move that third or pair that third in a pick to get a better deal than what you're getting here. If I'm trading Myles Garrett, I want as little collateral damage on that trade as possible. So I don't want to include any other viable assets on a Myles Garrett trade. I want to include dead weight to a Myles Garrett trade, not a decent asset. Including a third in a Myles Garrett trade, I think that feels reckless. So I don't think this would be the move for me, right? You would get pick 30 or something like that. And then you will get whatever the pick is next year, assuming that the Detroit Lions are relatively healthy. That's going to be another super late pick in Hendon Hooker. I don't know about that one. Also, like, the motivation for the Lions, we'll see where that is, but I wouldn't be convinced that the motivation is like 100% where it needs to in order for that to happen. Let's get the next trade scenario on screen. Let's see if you guys can make me say yes to a Myles Garrett trade. This one is from Matt, who said, my favorite so far was posted by a random Lions fan. Jameson Williams, Jack Campbell, and 2 first-round picks in exchange for Myles Garrett. Give me 1 second here. That's not awful. I don't know if it's good. Like, I'd be lying to you if I said I watched enough Detroit Lions football to know how much value to ascribe to somebody like Jack Campbell. But But I do know Jameson Williams. He's been interesting. He's also been somebody who has demonstrated horrible decision making. But you would get another wide receiver, you would get a linebacker, and you pick up 2 first. Again, too late first. I don't know how valuable that compensation would be. It would be enough. Like, you're not going to win if you make that trade, right? Like, that's not a win. Oh my God, Andrew Berry is the greatest trader of all time. He's awesome. Laser eye Andrew. That's not an amazing trade offer there. It's enough to where you could be like, I guess, right? Like, if Jameson Williams turns into a top tier wide receiver and Jack Campbell turns into a pretty good linebacker, and then you hit on one of those 2 extra firsts you get with a decent player, you can feel like you didn't make one of the worst trades in franchise history with that one. Like, it's possible to feel like you didn't make one of the worst trades. It wouldn't be a good trade. It wouldn't even be an equal trade, but it would be enough, right, to not feel like a complete failure. I don't think the Browns do it for that amount, though. Like, if you're asking me that question, would the Browns do it for this price? Probably not. Let's get the next one up. Let's see. You guys aren't making me want to trade Myles, man. And in chat, if you have any trade scenarios that you want to pop up, feel free to put them in the chat here. We'll make sure we get to those by the end of the show. All right. Michael says here, my favorite at the moment is to the Jaguars for pick 5 and 41 and their 1st and 3rd and a 2027 second. I know you're not high on QB, but this gives the Browns options to draft Sanders or Ward and gives them an opportunity to get Carter, Graham, or Hunter at 5. I seriously doubt you can get Abdul Carter at 5. I'm similarly doubtful about Travis Hunter being available at 5. I think if you want one of those guys, you got to take him at 2. Mason Graham will be there at 5. Maybe Shador's there at 5. But yeah, I'm more skeptical about Carter or Hunter. Look, here's the thing about drafting a quarterback this year. If you didn't have to trade Myles in order to make it happen, getting Abdul Carter and then a quarterback makes whatever you do at quarterback a lot more easy to stomach. Because the reason you wouldn't want to take a quarterback here is because you don't want to miss out on the blue chip player. If you're still able to get the blue chip player, you're more likely to take a risk at quarterback. And that risk could be Shador Sanders or Cam Ward. The thing is that do you feel like you got to take that quarterback at 2, or do you think your quarterback's going to be there at 5? You know, that's the question you have to ask yourself. Again, if you made this trade, if Andrew Berry made this trade, I don't think he would immediately get fired. I think at that point you would have to draft the quarterback. Like, if the centerpiece of your Myles trade is a 5th pick in the 1st round this year, you would have to draft the quarterback, because whatever you do with Myles, the only way to turn it into some level of win is to turn it into a quarterback. And if you can't turn it into a quarterback, it's pretty much a waste of time. So you would have to turn one of those picks into a quarterback. Let's see, you pick up 41 in next year's 1 and 3rd, and then the 2027 second. This would be okay. I don't think this would be terrible. If I had to trade Myles and this were an offer on the table and I've exhausted every resource to try to make this work for at least one more season, then I could see myself pulling the trigger on this. I wouldn't be excited about it, though. But I could pull the trigger on it, you know? So that's not the worst trade I've ever seen. Now, here's the problem with it, though. I see absolutely no reason for Jacksonville to do it. Like, what in the world tells Jacksonville, if we get Myles Garrett, we're going to beat the Chiefs? Like, why would they have any confidence to feel that way? Like, I get that they have a quarterback in Trevor Lawrence that they believe in at the moment right now. But honestly, does anybody think that the Jaguars are one player away from winning a Super Bowl series? Yeah, let me ask the question. Like, y'all tell me. Because I 100% don't think that is even close to the case that Jacksonville would be a Myles Garrett trade. Like, enough to mortgage their future on. Like, they need more stuff. And I think they understand that. Another thing to consider, right? Any team that's going to trade for Myles Garrett, I think the teams with the first-year GMs are probably the least likely, because that is a giant, bold move to make in your first year. And usually these bold moves aren't made in your first year, right? The first year you spend adding guys in free agency and doing other stuff to kind of fit, and then you assess where you are after year one, and then you get a little bit more aggressive in year two. That's just naturally how the GM position works. You go back, you remember John Dorsey, right? He didn't really do much in 2018 other than like use the resources that he had, sign some free agents. 2019, he got super aggressive, traded for Odell Beckham. That second year he was in charge. Same thing with Andrew Berry, where it wasn't that first year he made an aggressive trade, but it was in the 2022 offseason where he decided to trade 3 first-round picks for Deshaun Watson. All this being said, yeah, if the Jags offered that, I would be cool with it. I do have a serious question on why the Jaguars would even want to offer that pick, because I just don't see what's motivating them to do it. Even if we think that they're being a bit unrealistic about where they're at, I find it hard to believe that that's where they're going to be at. But it's something to think about. Let's hit with the next trade scenario. All right, this one is from Pawn Shop Guitars, who says Detroit gets Myles, Cleveland gets Taylor Decker, David Montgomery, a first and a third. I'm hanging up the phone. Sir. Again, man, these firsts don't mean the same when it's Detroit's 28th. Like, so basically, I'm trading Myles Garrett for a second and a third, and then 2 players whose contracts I can't afford because of the money that Myles Garrett is currently making to not play for the Cleveland Browns if I trade him. Again, got to consider that into your trade scenarios. It's not as clean as let's just throw a good player in there, right? The Browns have to be able to eat that contract. How can they eat it? Like, if Detroit wants that trade, they got to take Deshaun Watson. That's a trade that I'm only making if you take Deshaun Watson and do something to make that easier for me on the salary cap, because this is crazy. This is a crazy. No, I'm good on this. I don't know what chat's feeling on this one, but I am absolutely good on that. Again, can't afford these guys. Could not afford these guys. Let's get the next one up. Try to give me Decker. Like, you trying to dump a contract off on me? like, it's nuts. You tried to dump a contract off on me to get Myles Garrett? Are you serious? I would block your number forever. Oh, my goodness. Jordan says, favorite, Myles to New England for the number 4 pick in 2026 first round or 2025 top 40 second round selection. Wait, did he say or? So I could get either New England's first and second this year or New England's first and first next year. Well, I'm definitely taking the 2026 first. Again, right? Like, if this is the best offer, it's at least what people are expecting. So you're not going to get fired on site for making a terrible trade. It's still not a good trade, right? You're only getting 1 extra. Well, you're getting 2 extra first. And you're getting 4. So maybe, if you want to turn that into something, you can turn that into something. Maybe you want to pull a Texans, right? Where you get your quarterback and your edge. You get Abdul Carter, you get Shedeur Sanders, right? Like if you want to go ahead and do that, then you do that. If you feel that strongly about Shedeur, and a lot of this too, I think goes without saying. I'm looking at this from my perspective where I think Shedeur is a late first round graded QB that I don't want to spend a top 5 pick on. If the Browns look at Shedeur, which is very possible, as a quarterback that they would be more than happy to spend a top 5 pick on, then a trade like this becomes more attractive to them because it allows them to go BPA and it allows them to go quarterback, right? Because if you make this trade, you will know that you will at least get the third best player on your board outside of who you draft, because one would be whoever Tennessee picks. You would have the second pick and then third. So if you want to get Shedeur second, Tennessee goes whoever they go. Let's say they go Travis Hunter. You take Shedeur second, and then number 3 pick, they take whoever they take. You know that you can get Mason Graham at the very least, right? Or you could get possibly, Abdul Carter falls to you there. If Cam Ward and Shedeur go 1 and 2 overall, like a lot of people are projecting, and you're the Browns and you want Shedeur at 2, right? That means all you got to worry about is 3. So let's say Travis Hunter goes 3, you get Abdul Carter. Let's say Abdul Carter goes 3, you get Travis Hunter. So this would be a lot more easy to stomach if you believe that there is a quarterback for you to take in the top 5. My personal opinion, again, it's just my opinion. Doesn't mean it's right. It just means I'm being honest about how I feel about it. My personal opinion is that there isn't a quarterback that I would like to spend a top 5 pick on, and I don't think a quarterback worth not being in the next 2 draft classes for. So I don't think I would be the biggest fan of this, but internally the Browns are sold on Shedeur. And if that's the guy they want to go for, I cannot blame them for making this trade. Because you would be able to get you would be able to get your quarterback, you'd be able to get an extra first, and you could start from there, and that would be a very good starting point for a rebuild around a quarterback if you believe in one of these quarterbacks in the 2025 draft. So that's another thing to consider, right? On top of the money. How do you feel about the quarterback class? If you are like me and you don't love this quarterback class, any trade with the 2025 pick doesn't feel that appealing to you. But if you aren't like me, which is fair and reasonable to come to, and you like one of these quarterbacks enough to take them early, then all of a sudden, getting an extra top 10 pick or extra top 5 pick becomes more attractive. That's also not so expensive that I would think the Patriots would feel like it's unreasonable to do. I think it would be ambitious for the Patriots to do, but it's not so expensive that I'm like, oh, they just traded away their future like that Jaguars offer was. So again, if you think that quarterback is something that you want to do in this year's draft, that is an offer that you would probably want to take. If it came down to it, right? If Myles was completely unreceptive to any conversations, you get to draft day, he's still not receptive. All right, let's make the move, right? Like if you feel like that strongly about quarterback. I do not. So I don't love it. But maybe you like quarterback in this year's draft and you would like it. That's a fair enough point to get to. Let's get to the next trade scenario. Now, this one has a fancy graphic on it. It's from Bleacher Report. Okay, this is the professionals made this one. Let's hope it's not trash. The Patriots will get Myles Garrett. The Browns will get number 4, a 2025 third, another 2025 third, a 2025 fifth. And does that say Joe Milton? Again, similar to the trade scenario we just talked about, except for you don't pick up an extra first. You'll get a bunch of 3rd round picks. I would rather get a future pick, right? If I get 4 in 2025, I don't want a million selections in 2025. Because another thing to consider, and again, I don't think enough people are considering this, you're going to have some serious cap ramifications if you trade Myles Garrett this offseason that are going to impact you in the 2025 cap year. So you wouldn't want to add 2 extra thirds in a 5th plus another player this year. You would want to spread out whatever you bring in for Myles Garrett, preferably over 3 years, but definitely over 2 years. So instead of getting a third this year or 2/3 this year, I would rather get their 2026 first. Instead of getting their fifth this year, I would rather get a third in 2027. So I would want to spread it out. I don't even like, you could add Joe Milton to the deal. That's not like considerable enough money for me to care either way. You could just cut a back end player and bring in Joe Milton. It's not a big deal. But yeah, for the extra draft picks, I do care. And I want that spread out. And I want a first in 2026, not a couple of thirds in 2025. So I would turn that offer down, me personally. I want the extra first next year because I think the quarterback class is going to be better in 2026. That's also another thing that you got to think about too, right? Where do you think the quarterback's going to come? The Browns have to take a swing at quarterback in one of these 2 years. Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be next year? If it's next year, you want that extra first. If it's this year, you really value that extra fourth. It would be reasonable, right? Those last 2 offers would be reasonable. Let's see if we could get an unreasonable offer here. We've seen a couple of offers that I would categorize as reasonable. Let's get another one up. Look, man, there's nothing fun about trading Myles Garrett. I would like to throw that in here. This is not fun. Nobody's having fun here. But there are things to talk about. All right. Ernie, the Cowboys fan, suggested that the Browns would trade Myles Garrett. Wait, the number 2 overall and Myles Garrett? Did they just say that? Did they say the Browns? Oh, this is why I don't be on Twitter, man. This is why I don't be on Twitter. So the Browns would trade number 2 overall and Myles Garrett to get Micah Parsons and Trey Lance. Cowboys will use the 2nd overall pick to draft Travis Hunter. So no, absolutely throw this. I will block you and report you for harassment. That is crazy. That is an insanely bad trade. Are you serious? Stop using it. Stop playing on my phone. I would disconnect my phone for the rest of the day if I heard this bullshit come through my phone. Like, what? What? Also, I mean, my God, imagine the cap ramifications. Let's run through it real quick. Can you show my screen again? Let's see what that would cost the Browns when it comes to cap space. All right, so you would trade Myles. They want the 2nd overall pick, so this has to be pre-June 1st, right? So we're at minus $46 million in cap space. Let's see what this does. Micah Parsons. You would add him. Oh, he's only under contract for 1 more year, and you have to give him an extension? So we're what, $69 million in the hole? Are you serious, dog? Wait, no. He said Trey Lance too. How much I gotta pay Trey? Because ain't Trey about to be a free agency? Trey's a free agent. How are you trading Trey Lance? This trade makes no sense. No, this trade makes no sense. Absolutely not. We would be $70 million in the hole with a player who could hit free agency next offseason. What would be the point? What would be the point? Nah, man. Get out of here with this. Can we pull up the next one? Wow. We've seen some crazy scenarios today. That was the worst one I think we're going to see all day. I can't imagine it gets worse. All right. It gets worse. It gets worse. It gets so much worse. Who made this graphic, y'all? Let me try to see if I can figure that out. Who proposed this trade? What outlet proposed this trade? AFC North Access and Brown Central. I don't know much about those two brands. I've never heard of them before. So forgive me if I'm about to cross a line here, but that might be the worst trade offer I've seen today. We would get Debo Samuel. Okay. It's not a first. We would get Debo Samuel. No, this still sucks, man. This still sucks. This is an awful trade. We have to give up a fourth too, dog. Like, so basically I'm doing a pick swap and then swapping. So all I'm getting is a 6. I'm getting madder the more I look at this trade offer. So let me try to, because I'm just reacting to it. So the idea here is that we swap Myles, Garrett, and Debo Samuel. We do a pick swap where I move up, 3 spots in the 4th to 99 in the 3rd. So we do a pick swap, and I get a 6 for my troubles. A 6th-round pick to compensate for adding on a bunch of salary cap debt. Now, also, let's go back to the computer so we could look up how much this would cost the Browns, like we did with Micah Parsons. And at least it ain't going to get you to $70 million, right? Because you trade for Debo, his base salary is not that expensive. And San Francisco wouldn't have much to deal with. You would have to give Debo a new contract. And why would the Browns trade for a 29-year-old wide receiver? Like, if they're going to have to rebuild, who is not seen as good as his position as Myles Garrett is at his, you would have to give me a serious answer on that. But yeah, I think this is a bad idea too. I think this is an awful idea. I am very disappointed with the two publications that have gone far enough to offer up a graphic for one of these trades and what they have suggested. What? That's awful, man. Does anybody in chat like that trade? Did anybody in chat like that trade? Let me check. I don't think anybody in chat liked that trade. What if Trevor Lawrence was thrown into the deal for Jacksonville? Why would the Jacksonville Jaguars throw Trevor Lawrence in that deal if that whole thing is to like get Trevor Lawrence closer to a championship? All right, we got some comments here. Let's put the comments on screen to react to them. And again, if you have your own trade proposals or reactions to these trades, feel free to comment them in the live chat. That way we can react to it live here on Quincy Carrier Live. Jeffrey Champion says, do you think that maybe Aaron Rodgers is a big enough name at this point in time to make Myles Garrett stay? Because not too long ago, look what we did with Joe Flacco. Maybe. I think Aaron Rodgers is a big name, right? The same way that Russ was a big name, the same way if you bring in Kirk Cousins is a big name. But the issue is that, yes, these guys are big names, but the value of the brand of Kirk Cousins and the value of the brand of Russell Wilson, or the value of the brand of Aaron Rodgers has diminished significantly because they're not just old, but have played not up to their standard for consecutive years, right? Aaron Rodgers' last 2 full seasons haven't been great. They've been not terrible, but they haven't been great. Kirk Cousins, his last full season wasn't amazing. And who was he? Russell Wilson. He's coming off a good season, but he's been cooked for a while. He did a lot of damage to his name in Denver. So I don't think any of those names move the needles because of those reasons. The only name I can see possibly moving the needle is Matt Stafford. Because Matt Stafford, while he's older than Kirk Cousins, is a player that people still think is still as good as he's ever been. So I think Matt Stafford might, let Myles at least get to a place where he's like, I'll give this a try this year and see how far we go. I could see Myles doing that. With like somebody like him, Aaron Rodgers, it would be a toss up if he got to that point, to be honest with you. Like, I wouldn't be 100% sure if he would do that for Aaron Rodgers. Because again, the damage to Aaron Rodgers' brand over the last 3 years has been enormous. But thank you for the question. Can we get another one up on screen? W. Skeezer says post June 1st trade. Okay. Myles, a 2026 fourth, and a 2027 second for the Vikings. JJ McCarthy, a 2026 first, and a 2026 third. If you take that 2027 second out the Browns deal here, I'm more likely to do it. Well, you're getting 3 firsts and JJ. So basically, they don't trade you a first. Their first this year is JJ McCarthy that they're trading you. 2026 first and 2027 first. I'd be more likely to do this. I wasn't super high on JJ McCarthy when he came out, but if the Browns were high on him, then yeah, it makes sense. This trade makes sense. I would try like hell to not include that 2027 second because it's just I don't want stuff popping up 3 years later. So I would try to see if I could turn that into just giving them Myles in a 2026 fourth, and then they could give me all of that. Hell, I could even say, hey, you just got to give me the first in 2026 and the first in 2027. You could take out that third. I'll take out that second, and we could just make that deal from there. You know, I take one pick out, you take one pick out. We be nice and smooth because what that third in 2026 has a similar value to that second in 2027 right now. So, you know, let's just do that. So I would take out that second in 2027 and maybe take out that 2026 third from Minnesota. But if Minnesota offers you this, again, it's heavily dependent on 2 things. 1, how do you feel about JJ McCarthy as a prospect? And 2, how do you feel about Shedeur Sanders as a prospect? If you feel stronger about JJ than you do about Shedeur Cam, then you make this trade easily. If you feel similar or worse about JJ than you do about Shedeur or Cam, then you don't make this trade. And if you feel equally as bad about all of these guys, JJ and Shedeur and Cam, than you do about comparing them to the future draft classes, then you just punt this can down the road and you don't take this trade. So that would be intriguing, right? I think Houston and Minnesota are my dark horse like candidates for teams that could make a crazy move for Myles Garrett that we're not anticipating right now, right? I think those 2 teams might make more sense and might feel like they're in a position that people don't think that they're in to make a move like that. And they have assets that could get them that, right? Which is unique to almost every other contender, right? Houston can give you a Derek Stingley who's expendable, or Will Anderson who wouldn't be expendable but would be worth swapping with Myles Garrett to get a win now scenario. Minnesota similarly can, make a JJ McCarthy expendable in pursuit of just keeping Sam Darnold. So there are a lot of things to think. Do we got any more comments to put on screen here? Question Q, is Abdul Carter the next Myles Garrett? No. I also think we should make this point clear. If the Browns have to trade Myles Garrett and they draft Abdul Carter, understand that Abdul Carter will never be as good as Myles Garrett. And you're hearing this from what people claim to be Abdul Carter's number 1 supporter for being drafted to the Browns, right? I love Abdul Carter. He will never be as good as Myles Garrett. Like, just that Myles Garrett is once in a generation. Abdul Carter is a really great prospect, like a blue chip prospect. Myles Garrett is like, those only come around once a decade. He's generational. Abdul Carter has the potential to have a really great career, potentially a Hall of Fame career. Myles Garrett is already a Hall of Famer. Like, even if they both made the Hall of Fame, which is projecting a lot for Abdul, But even if they both made the Hall of Fame, we got to be honest. Myles Garrett is a different level of Hall of Famer than most guys who enter the Hall of Fame. Like, it's just a different level of dominance he's been able to have. So is that after the way Darnold finished the year, they wouldn't make that trade? I would agree. Like, again, I don't see the motivation for Minnesota to do that. But if Minnesota came knocking and they wanted to trade Sam Darnold, not trade Sam Darnold, they wanted to trade for Myles, I would probably have to take J.J. McCarthy off their hands. That would be the cost. You got to give me a quarterback solution, right? Because late first-round picks ain't going to do it for me. Hell, you can keep your 2025 first-round pick. Like, I ain't really after that, but I do want some other picks. Matt Macklin says, oh, yeah, we got that one up. The Vikings wouldn't make that trade. Again, I think that's a very reasonable place to be at. We got one more, or is that everything? Okay, ET says, not my trade, but I saw someone propose Myles Garrett, a 2025 third to the Rams for Matt Stafford, a 2026 first, and a 2026 fourth. I just don't see why the Rams would do that. Because, like, if they are trading for Myles Garrett, it's because they think they're going to win now, but they just traded their quarterback to the Browns. Yeah, that kind of breaks the mold, right? Like, I just don't see why they would do it. And I think that's the ultimate problem with that trade is that, and again, this is the crazy thing about the logic that you have to think about with the Myles Garrett trade. On one hand, the trade has to be enough to entice the Cleveland Browns to take a significant cap penalty into 2025 and to trade one of the best players they've ever had. Like, think about that. That's what you have to incentivize the Browns with. On the other hand, if you're a team that wants Myles Garrett, you have to reasonably believe that this one guy is going to get you over the hump into the Super Bowl, into the championship, into a Lombardi trophy. If you trade Matt Stafford, then you're nowhere near a Lombardi trophy if you're the Los Angeles Rams, or at least I would believe that would be to believe. So what would be the benefit to making that move for the Rams? This is why I don't think this is going to happen quickly. There is too much to consider for everybody involved for this to be a quickly made up decision. Skeezer says it in the chat, and I agree with him. The reality is Myles probably isn't going anywhere until 2026 because, yes, in 2026, the burden becomes significantly lower for the Browns to trade him. The price tag drops significantly for other teams to trade for him, and it becomes a much more reasonable conversation for the Browns to get him. Now, the only thing I can see that rushes the Browns on this is if they are in on this quarterback class in 2024. In 2025, if they are in on this quarterback class, which I don't believe they are, and like me personally, I'm not in, but if they are in on quarterback in this year, then maybe it might be worthwhile to get 2 top 5 picks because they can get a quarterback and get somebody to support the quarterback. Maybe you want to draft Shador and get Travis. Like, maybe that's what you see as your key to the future. You become team prime. That'd be fun under Stefanski. But outside of that, I don't see a ton of scenarios where the Browns feel their hand forced to trade him. But that's just me. It's been a fun hour here on QC Live. We got the duel and mock drafts after this with Jacob Roach and Sam Penix. So have some fun there going on in the next hour. I want to thank you guys if you have joined me for this hour, for watching along, discussing with me, and having conversations about the impossible, which is a Myles Garrett trade. I want to thank you guys for watching. As always, have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome in. I think we're like at episode 4 or whatever, or something like that, or 5 or somewhere on episodes here. So welcome into another episode of the Mock Draft Duel. Sam, how are you doing this evening, man? You are muted. There we go.
Well, I was doing better until I made that mistake. So this is my first time doing a live show. Appreciate everyone bearing with me here. Really nervous. I'm
I
doing
did
pretty
it on the
well.
first
Busy,
episode.
but
I was rolling on our first episode, like, and it was just like, Jacob, nobody can hear you, bro. like this is what's going on.
It's like, man, I had the best mock of all time, but no one heard it.
I once did a live show from like the parking lot at a training camp practice, like I don't know, like 2 or 3 years ago. I got like 8 minutes in and it had been muted the whole time. and it was and I just deleted it. I was like, we're just not gonna do that. But welcome in, guys, to another episode of the OBR Mock Draft Duel. I'm Jacob Roach. That's Sam Penix. We are here again to go through a couple more mock drafts. I'm going to actually use Pro Football Network Simulator this week.
Oh, getting weird with it today.
Well, they updated it yesterday. So they said they updated it yesterday, and they've got a new board and kind of like move some things around and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I figured I would try that since we haven't used that on this program.
Right.
So I figured I would go with that. So we will go for there.
Right.
Sam, do you have anything interesting, any tidbits before we start?
I mean, there was a football game last night. I don't know if you like paid attention to that, because I didn't really. I think I watched like 10 minutes of it total. I think my biggest takeaway was like that team structure is exactly what the Browns were trying to do up until like 2021, end of 2021. So the vision is there, but obviously some things changed. So
I listened to Locked On NFL Scouting with Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino on. I love that show, and they really put out some really cool things, really good points about the Super Bowl, where they were just like Howie Roseman just drafts the best players. Like he's taken. What I mean by that is like Jalen Carter falls to him, and he's like, I'm not going to overthink that. He's a really, really good player. He's the best player on the board. I'm taking him. He takes 2 corners, one of which everybody told me I was crazy and that he would have to play safety and that he would be a returner only. And he had a pick 6 yesterday, but whatever. So like, but the thing is, it's there. It's that true, like, take all the talent and figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, take the most talent, figure it out. Like, that's the argument for Abdul Carter. That's the argument for Travis Hunter and things like that. It's like maybe it's not the biggest need yet. And yes, you've got to mix some needs with your draft picks as well. But like, yeah, man, it's just like, let me draft a bunch of really good players. Use free agency to fill in some spots here and there. And like, my favorite thing is they draft Jalen Reagor and it doesn't work out, right? We're not gun shy. They were like, I'm going to go right after Devontae Smith the next year. So they weren't like, oh, we had this massive miss at the position where no. There was a really good wide receiver on the board when they came up the next year and they took it. And it's just, I think, a really great Bill. Yeah. Bill says the Ravens do it too. You're right. The Ravens do it too. The Eagles and Ravens don't overthink it. They draft the best guys available. Yes. And that is why Howie what's the guy's name in Baltimore since Ozzie Newsome left?
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Okay, all right. We're gonna do this.
Ravens GM do the old Madden thing where they just didn't have the rights to the coaches' names.
Eric DaCosta. There we go.
Yeah.
My favorite was that they good.
Another thing about the Eagles is like you're saying with guys like Reagor. I mean, they've had their fair share of misses. Reagor, they did the whole Carson Wentz trade up and then sign him to a huge deal, and that flopped. And then their big free agent signing from last offseason, Bryce Huff, was like $34 million over 2 years, and he wasn't even active for the Super Bowl. And they can recover from these things because they don't feel pressured to go all in on, this what's perceived as the biggest need. They just continue to draft really good players. Like they had, like Milton Williams is going to get paid a handsome amount this offseason. They took Jalen Carter after him. They already had Fletcher Cox before, and then he retired. There's just a constant pipeline of good talent because they continually stockpile that because they have the security in their jobs. Where it's like, hey, we can plan 1, 2, 3 years down the road and still be competitive now. Like, it's a really sustainable model, and you just kind of have to like commit to that and stay committed to that in order for it to work. Plus, have the right guys making the picks.
And it helps not to trade a bunch of picks for a quarterback who ends up not being able to play.
That does help. Fun fact, yeah.
that one. All right, man. Like I started.
I'll deal with that later. We'll make something.
I've got some conversations that I have with other people. All right, man. I started us off last week, so let's get the festivities, guys. If you got questions, I saw some questions about who I love in the draft. We got some of that stuff. Can we send Andrew Berry to a summer camp to learn more with Howie? Yeah, that'd be great. I think the Browns were doing that until they did the Watson trade. Like, I think that was what they were doing. They were like trying to mirror best available, and like, because people will always dog them about the Jed Wills, but like people loved Jed Wills in that class. Like,
he was my OT too. Like he was, I thought he was great, and he was great in college, and he had it all. He has it all. It's just you can't, without really understanding who someone is as a person, you're not gonna know. Because, like, as far as I can remember, there weren't those red flags, warning signs about work ethic or on-field effort with him in college. Like, I remember him pancaking guys to the ground after the whistle. Like, there was one play where he just straight up sat on another player in the middle of the play just to, like, get him to the ground. And it was like, that's awesome. I love that mentality. And then it just disappeared in the pros.
And like as soon as he gets drafted too, he's like tweeting at OBJ like, "You tell me how long you need to get open." Like I was hyped.
Apparently that was exactly like 1.6 seconds, and then that's the cutoff, and then
ole. All right, man. I will throw you up on the board and let's get these festivities rolling.
All right. I think I did. I took Sanders last time. I'm gonna be boring. Like Carter is the best player in the draft. I mean, how many times can you say it? Like, I'm gonna do a deep dive with some film and some numbers on him at some point on the OBR, but like the guy's just a stud, and he is like, I know that the term gets thrown around, but this is the worst he's ever going to be. And like the sky is absolutely the limit for this player. And I think obviously, I mean, the likelihood that Garrett gets traded, I think is pretty low, but if you were going to find a prospect who you thought, okay, he has a legitimate shot at replacing at least most of Garrett's impact, it'd be Carter. And it just so happens that you may, depending on what the Titans do, you may be in a position to just take him. I think you'll have trade offers to move up to 2, but like I am perfectly content to just sit there and take a absolute stud.
I got asked this question on Sports for CLE last week. I continue to say that that's my number one preference. Like my number one preference remains being Abdul Carter. A quick couple questions we got. Is Dameon Pierce a guy you guys would look to bring in? I like Dameon Pierce. I'd be fine with that. Yeah, I don't see.
He's a good player when he's actually like used properly.
Right. Do you look at the Eagles and just want the Browns to invest in the lines heavily? I'm okay with one of the later quarterbacks. I think I am. Yeah. this is the draft to invest, especially in the defensive line and then in the interior of the offensive line. Yeah. And then you get one of the Sam. We've talked about it. Those mid round quarterbacks. We've talked about them ad nauseum on this show, and we're going to here in just a little bit too. I'm sure. So, so I'm going to make for my first one. I'm actually going to go with Travis Hunter. And a lot of it because you are going with Abdul Carter. I don't want to go with Abdul Carter, but I want to make a case for Travis Hunter. I have, depending on when you're watching this, if you're watching this live, it's not out on the OBR.com. But if you're watching on Tuesday, my draft profile on Travis Hunter is out. I went back and rewatched all of his wide receiver tape and his corner tape. And I feel very strongly that he is the most dynamic playmaker at wide receiver in this draft. I really think what he does after the catch, his acceleration, his top speed, he's got this crazy body control where like he'll run these crossers and as he's getting ready to catch, he'll slam on the brake and then just go diagonally back across the field. And I'm like, how do you, he just has insane body control. Like he's kind of still a little bit raw at both positions because of, I think, the way he split time. Like
exactly.
And he's lean. He doesn't have like, you worry about him in like press man coverage, but his athleticism, like sometimes the physical guys.
Smith is fine. Like he's gonna be fine.
Exactly. And it's like, does he struggle with the physicality and contested catches? Sure, but he has the athleticism to jump over them. Like the athleticism to just jump over them. And I think he can play some corner. I think he can potentially be a safety, whatever. But when I watch Travis Hunter, I see a difference maker in the pass game. And for me, for that reason, I go Travis Hunter in this draft.
I think maybe like all the things you listed are reasons to love him, but I think the thing I love the most about him is just like he's a football player. He's not just an athlete. Yeah. Like he just has that feel for the game where you're like, okay, that guy knows exactly what he's doing, and I trust him, like regardless of what the situation is, because he just knows how to play football. And I think if you're able to put him full time at receiver, those athletic gifts and that just like sixth sense on how to play the sport are just going to blossom even more. And I think, like you said, difference maker on offense is the right way to put it because he has so much talent.
He won the award for the best wide receiver and best defensive player in the same year. And the Heisman. On top of that, he also won. But yeah, dude, his football IQ is crazy. Like when he's playing corner, he's running the routes for those wide receivers from time to time. And it's because he's also a freaking wide receiver. And so like I know he's not going to be playing like 1,400 snaps like he did in college. But like, man, it's just the physical stuff at wide receiver. Can we have our version of Sonic and Knuckles? We have Knuckles. Yeah. I like that. The Sonic and Knuckles comparison at wide. Yeah, I like that. I love this. Don't make it difficult. Draft Travis Hunter. He studies the game well, and we won't have to worry about his off the field stuff. He just loves ball. Yeah, like you said. I mean, it's playing off what you said, Sam. He's flat out a football player. All right, man. I will kick it back to you.
All right. I think like every single time that I've done a mock, I've always gone offensive line with my second pick. And I'm going to switch it up a little bit because Omarion Hampton is available.
Whoa.
And I just really like him. I think he's going to be a really good NFL running back. And it reminds me of 2018 when Nick Chubb was available top of the second round and the Browns just added him. And it's like, this guy's a stud. I know he's a running back, and we'll talk about what I'm going to do in a little bit about the offensive line. But Hampton, I think, has just an all-around skill set, and I think there's pretty much minimal weaknesses, if any, to his game. And I think he can be a real legitimate RB1, especially for a team who needs to get back to its roots with running the ball. And you don't know what the rest of your RB room is going to look like. So I think Hampton is going to be your frontline starter, and I think he can be a really good one.
He can be a workhorse. Like if you're looking to find you a workhorse, I think Omarion Hampton can be that workforce running back. And it's like, and like, we'll talk about it as we move along. But like I love double dipping in this class. Like I love it. I do like this comment.
You got to.
Yeah, exactly. If Hunter doesn't work out at one position, try him at the other. Yeah, it's like you can definitely. Like that's fine with me. All right, so Travis Hunter. I am so tempted to take Colston Loveland if he was there, the tight end from Michigan. He's my tight end too. Taking him there would be insane.
You got to run to the podium for that, but like I don't see that happening.
No, I know, and I don't see Kenneth Grant going there, being there. I won't be weird and do the. Ooh, this is interesting because this board is a lot different than the boards.
Yeah, yours fell very interestingly.
Like, here's the thing. I still look at Jalen Milroe at 33 and think, a little bit of pressure, not being a first rounder, not being that second overall pick, being a developmental guy. I think he's got some crazy traits.
Brad Ward is not going to be thrilled, though. Did anyone tell him to check NFL news because Kenny Pickett just won a Super Bowl?
Oh no! Don't tell. Did you see Ken Dorsey? Ken Dorsey's getting an OC job in Dallas.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at tackle. I love Josh Connerly. Look at a wide receiver. I'm not crazy about Trey Harris. You know what? I'm gonna go with a different. Should I look at defensive line? Shamar Stewart's not going to be there. That would be insane. You know what? There is an offside chance that people overthink Kenneth Grant and he does fall there. You should look. I mean, you can see it here on what Pro Football Network has on him. You should not be this size, 6'3", 340, and be considered a great athlete.
Right.
And for that reason, I think he may fall, or not fall, but he may go very high. But it's an incredibly deep defensive line draft, and that could push these guys down. So for that reason, if Kenneth Grant is there, the other defensive tackle from Michigan, I think that would just be a slam dunk.
I agree. That would be that's like one of the best case scenarios, I feel like. Because he's a stud, and I think he fits exactly what we need on the line. I think he and Hall could be a really good duo for the future, for sure.
When I got
all right, I'm trying to do my. Let me zoom in. I'm trying to do my patented. Get rid of all the late round picks.
We were clear. We were all trash talking about Sam getting rid of all of his late round picks in the Slack today. But I respect the move. You're like,
wants them.
It's like I'm not doing it.
The other 31 teams have caught on. They're like, no, we're not. You're gonna keep them, and you're gonna like it.
You're gonna.
All right, am I gonna have to go? All right. So this is why I wanted to move up. We have two.
Okay.
Well, 3. 4. I mean, we have multiple offensive lineman prospects that I'm interested in here, and I didn't want to risk any of them, getting sniped. So I think Milam is the best offensive lineman on the board, but
I think so.
Is he a tackle? That's the question. He's got the short arms, which worry me, to the point where I might be more likely to go with Ursery or Williams. Now, Ursery is the more pro-ready guy, like a guy you could probably think about potentially giving the starting job to as a rookie.
Yep.
Williams, probably not, but he has loads and loads of potential.
Such a high ceiling.
So if the Browns found a starting caliber veteran left tackle in free agency, even if it's a stopgap like Cam Robinson or something, then I'm much more likely to go with Williams and be like, okay, I'm betting on this guy's traits.
Yep.
But because we don't have free agency done yet, I'm going to go with Ursery and bet on his size and his quick feet for his size translating. And then if that doesn't happen at tackle, I think I'm still getting a really good guard. So I'm happy with this here.
Ursery is very similar to Kenneth Grant. You should not be able to move like that at that size. You just shouldn't. I mean,
we'll
if you're
take the
looking
unfair athletes, that's fine.
Yeah. And if you're looking to instantly improve your run game, Ursery is your guy. Question about Question about Harold Fannin. I think he's fantastic. Yeah.
Great player.
2 thumbs up.
Also, what was he? 6'3" and 3/8 or something, and 238 pounds.
Yeah.
I never put this together, but someone mentioned how he's very similar in size, like percentage difference from Brock Bowers. And that guy went super high and just had the best rookie season for a tight end ever. So just saying.
We're just saying. Don't worry. We're not doing anything crazy. We're not doing anything crazy.
It's a suggestion, direction.
It's just something. I like to start and look at what I'm at offensive line. I like Gray Zabel a ton. He's a little bit older, but I think he's a guard. Holland Pierce is enormous, 6'8", 342. He's.
I still got to watch him.
You'll have a good time. Let me just put it that way. You'll have a good time when you watch him. Wide receiver, we're still looking. I'm not looking. I like Elikai Manor. I couldn't see him here at 67.
No, he's too good to be here.
Mason Gunner Helm. I'm like a sneaky Elijah Arroyo guy. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. You're gonna call me a homer. Everybody can call me a homer, but I love Travion Henderson so much. I keep just moving him up higher and higher, but I just think you got to get someone to be that power guy. Not that he can't run with power, because he runs with plenty of power. And I think I really loved watching him and Quinshon Judkins block for each other this year as the year went on. But it's just like you need a home run hitter that gets on the outside, gets on his horse, has a third gear. And maybe it's a little early to take Travion Henderson. I keep moving him up my board. But I'm going to take Travion Henderson here and just get even more explosive on offense.
I think that's one that's not too unrealistic, and I think that'd be a home run pick at 67, personally.
DeJuan Jones, right. I heard he's looking good and lost a lot of weight. He's down to like 350. Oh, cool. I would love that if he was in good shape.
I hope he can recover. Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
That's the hope. All right. One thing I don't like about PFF Simulator is there's no way to see players on the board without being on the clock. So that makes it more difficult for trade up purposes, but that's just improve your product, guys. It's great, but you can take it up a notch.
I'm very impressed they added the my picks thing now this year, because you used to not be able to see all of the picks you had already made, and I'd be like, did I take a running back yet?
like man, I ended up with five quarterbacks. How did that happen?
I gotta take better notes.
All right. Oh, interesting. Harold Fannin is on the board. We're just talking about him. I don't think he's lasting to 94. He's too good.
That's one of those, like, you just hope people overthink it because he's from a small school. You're like, I just overthink it. Overthink it and let me not overthink it.
Exactly. So there's a couple different options that I like here. I know I've already taken a running back, but I feel like 94, 102, I think is where I would like to double dip.
Okay.
And I really like Devin Neal.
Devin Neal, he feels like just the patience and vision. It just in the acceleration.
Yep.
Yeah. Feels like a.
I'm doing it.
Okay.
I love running backs who just know what they're seeing and what's going to happen and are patient enough to wait to make their main cut and just plant and go until that perfect moment when that hole is just opening up, and then they can explode through, and that's Neal. Love watching that guy.
Yeah, you got to let your blocks form in that wide zone system, and I think he does a great job of doing exactly that. Okay, let's see what we've got. I do want to. I mean, I think I need to look at what offensive line looks like here, because I'm starting to get a little bit later, and I don't want to get too crazy and wait too long. I missed out on Gray Zabel. I was going to try to potentially stash him. It's a little early for those tackles. So kind of lean away. Don't love what's going on. I already got a wide receiver. Why I keep forgetting I took Travis Hunter, so I keep forgetting that I did that. Okay, so let me look at defense. Let me look at corners, kind of a sneaky need. Cy Alexander, is he an older player? Why don't I know? I think he's an older player. It's one of those things where I have to Google it real quick. I like, and I can never remember. I'm always like, how old are you? I don't know.
I don't remember.
We're not gonna find out. It's gonna be all right. Let's see what we got at edge. You know what? I maybe it's early for Braden Swinson, but Braden Swinson had a really nice Senior Bowl. The LSU pass rusher, 6'4", 255. I think he's got some power. He's got some explosiveness. He's got just some traits I would like to kind of bank on. Maybe it's a little early for that, but I think I'm going to go that direction.
I think late third is when you start getting into the range where you're betting on traits. So I think that's entirely fair. Speaking of traits, Mello Dotson is here. He's a little bit of a longer guy. Like you said, corner is a sneaky need, and I think they can use. I personally think the fourth round is like the perfect spot for a corner, because I think you'll probably have dealt with most of your bigger needs up until that point, and that's where a lot of the positions like offensive line and edge, not necessarily running back, but definitely offensive line, especially tackle, that's where the talent starts to kind of drop off. And I think there'll be a couple solid corner prospects. I think I'm going to go with Dotson here.
You're going to go Dotson. Okay. All right. So I'm going to come back on the board. So it's to two players for me. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, the other Kansas corner. I like him quite a bit. But but I kind of lean towards a guy that you are big on that I really like. I think I got to go with Big Anthony Belton, the left tackle from North Carolina State.
Some great value there.
I think he's going to climb more. I'm interested to see what he does at the combine. You know what I mean? Like, he's one of those guys that I'm very interested to see how that works out for him. But yeah, I'm going to take a left tackle here at 103.
All right. So I just did it. I just traded all my picks away for a mid-fourth. So I'm going to end up with a solid 6 players. I think that's a fairly good-sized draft class. 6 players in the top 125 here. So just got to decide who the last one's going to be. Jackson Dart.
I got all these picks.
I traded all my picks for Jackson Dart. I mean, if we're being honest, this is probably where you would take him. But, I mean, from everything we're hearing, he's going to be long gone. So I haven't done tight end. I haven't done safety. I haven't done receiver. And I haven't done interior defensive line. So I think those are going to be my 4 target positions here. It's not OT. I would take another tackle, though, if there were a good one. What else did I say? Deal. So, I don't know. Aeneas Peebles, do you think he lasts this long? Is that realistic? I know he had a good Senior Bowl. It probably lifts him up a bit.
He might.
Shamar Turner, too.
Oh, yeah.
I know there's the injury, but I mean, maybe that even, I don't know. Does that work in his favor or not? I don't know with this team.
It could be one of those things.
There's a couple different options. I think I'm going to say Shamar Turner because I think if he's healthy here, it's probably a pretty easy pick at 125. So we'll assume until proven otherwise that he's healthy because my job isn't on the line taking him here. So we're just gonna do that.
So you can just do it. All right. So now this is the part of the show where I make a bunch of picks in a row, and then we grade our drafts.
Maybe I won't do this to you 1 week.
Well, next week there's a good chance we'll have a guest stop by next week. So,
all right.
So it won't matter that much. 165.
Does his name rhyme with Leica Boach?
No.
And he probably doesn't have a mustache.
No,
it's the reverse disguise. No glasses, no mustache.
Yeah, right. Just beard, just Amish beard. Just go like that. I like Curtis Rourke here at 165. If you're looking at quarterback, you haven't taken one. Older prospect, but you 70% of his passes this year, kind of a rhythm and timing. He had a really good start to the year under pressure, but he's smart, does a good job reading defenses. I think he can operate well in a Kevin Stefanski style system. It'd just be a high-end backup that can win some games if need be.
And that torn ACL too that he played with, that's a factor.
Still the craziest thing ever. It makes so much sense because I watched him at Ohio University up close a lot. And not that I thought he was a freak of a runner, but he was a runner. Like he used his legs, more than a lot of times it was to extend plays and things like that. But he used them. And then everybody was like, oh, he hasn't ran at all. He's a complete statue. And I'm like, it's not that when I hadn't really watched, because I didn't watch him till early season, I started getting into him a month or so into the season. I'm like, that's not what I remember. And then you're like, oh, he played all year on a torn ACL. You remember when Johnny Dixon, was that his name? He did it for Oregon, the quarterback. He eventually went to the Steelers. Something Dixon. He was a running quarterback, and he played like 6 games on a torn ACL.
Yeah. Something Dixon.
Okay, so let's see here. So we've got our wide receiver. Let's see what we got at corner, because that's kind of a need. We got a corner. Okay. I don't know why Jacob Parrish is 227 on their board.
Yeah. Upton Stout at
I won't take him. I'm going to take Upton Stout because I think there's a chance because he's undersized. He's a smaller guy, but he's played outside. He's played nickel. He found a home at nickel this year. I just love his physicality. Like, you're going to be like, oh, he's like, I think he's, let me see. I think about 178. He does not play like he's 178. Like, he'll go through your chest. He's got
it's not Emmanuel Forbes.
Right. But it does feel kind of like a Jim Schwartz corner to me. And so I'll do that.
Feisty nickel corners. You gotta love those guys.
I love me a good feisty nickel corner. I gotta check back and make sure we don't have anything. All right. Jalen Noel, the other wide receiver from Iowa State. I like him. Let's see. I'm not gonna take Seth McLaughlin again, but I want to. I just did it last week. But I will look and see what the guard position looks like here. I do like Joshua Gray quite a bit from Oregon State. Has the inside-outside flexibility. He was better this year at guard. Had played left tackle for them the last couple of years. 6'3", 300 pounds. I think he moves relatively well and has that kind of position flexibility that I think Andrew Berry covets.
Willie Lampkin is awesome. Like, talk about fun to watch.
Yeah.
He's just, I don't know how that size works.
I haven't taken a tight end, huh? Oh boy. If Brenningstool's there, Brenningstool just feels like a guy that like never reached what he could do.
No, he'll be a better pro than he was in college. There's too much there.
It reminds you of what you see from Luke Lachey as well, where you're like, you could be a guy. You just didn't put it together. You got the size, the athleticism, the reliable hands. And I think a part of Brenningstool's thing was Cade Klubnik was developing with him.
Yeah.
Like, and they were both kind of developing and growing at the same time. And for that reason, I think that you didn't quite get I did take my corner. Okay. All right. Am I thinking of calling Oliver? No, he's not. I'm thinking of. I would take Jack Kaiser here if he was there. I think he's like 24, but he's like the duel
6th round. Yeah, you can bend the rails a little bit.
I just think he flies all over the field and just plays with like his hair on fire, and I think he'd be tremendous on special teams. Like, and that's part of what I'm looking at when I'm looking at some of these guys later in the drafts. Like, hey, can you play specials? Like, do we just like mix it up and take Shiloh here?
It's like you can do the clickbait title. Sanders to the Browns.
And then really it's like pick what am I at? 217 and it's Shiloh Sanders. Or people would be so mad at me. They'd be like, what are you doing? Let's see. What other running backs do I still got here?
Yeah, there's some names there.
Yeah. Here's the thing about Donovan Edwards. Like, it was a massively disappointing year this year for him, but like, this is a dude that they expected to have a massive year at Michigan this year.
There's some excellent tape from him out there.
Yeah, you go watch
I continue to be intrigued by him on day 3. I know all the Buckeyes fans are going to hate it, but I think he can be something at the next level.
Yeah, I'm willing to take a chance on that at 217. And just be like, okay, this is a guy that at one point people were like, he's the next dude. I mean, he was on the cover of the new college football game for a reason.
He was the front and center guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody wanted to make sure you saw him.
Yeah. At this point in the draft, you're looking for anything that you can see in a guy, any singular trait or any singular past performance or experience where you're like, okay, we might be able to do something with this, or this might translate a little bit. And for him, you have a dominant season in the Big Ten. So that's absolutely worth taking a shot on.
I just tried to slide a kicker under the radar as Mr. Irrelevant. We will see if the listeners and watchers of this podcast call me out on it or not. I feel like I had a weird draft. We'll get to it. But here is Sam's mock draft for you.
Yeah, so we start out with Abdul Carter, edge from Penn State, the obvious pick there at 2. 33, we mix it up a little bit with Omarion Hampton from North Carolina to be the new starting running back, and moved up from the early 3rd round pickup to pick number 62 to get Ariante Ursary, the tackle from Minnesota. Then at 94, we double dip with running back with Devin Neal from Kansas. And then at 102, we double dip with Kansas Jayhawks with Mello Dots in the corner. And then we trade all of our remaining picks up to 125 to land Shamar Turner, the defensive tackle from Texas A&M.
I like it. I learned today that I feel like Pro Football Network's board is kind of weird, and I don't like it. So I took Travis Hunter because I think he's the most dynamic playmaker at wide receiver in this class. That's where I would draft him. If he doesn't want to be a wide receiver, then I wouldn't draft him. You know what I mean? Like if he's like, I want to primarily be a corner, I'd be like, maybe not. But I think can be a very, very special playmaker.
Jacob Roach just said that he would not draft Travis Hunter. So I don't know what this guy is doing.
I did technically say that. Kenneth Grant, the big hulking athletic defensive tackle from Michigan. Travion Henderson, the Ohio State running back, who I think is a home run hitter. Braden Swinson, who I think is going to continue to climb up boards, got some size, speed, power. Really like that. Anthony Belton, the big hulking left tackle from North Carolina State. Curtis Rourke, the game-managing quarterback from Indiana. Upton Stout, the nickel corner from Western Kentucky. Joshua Gray, the guard from Oregon State, but also has some experience playing left tackle. Jake Brenningstool, the still raw but toolsy tight end from Clemson. Jack Kaiser, the kind of fly all over the place linebacker from Notre Dame. Donovan Edwards kind of had a disappointing season as a running back with Michigan, but I'm willing to bet on what I've seen in the past. And then I'm just going to take a kicker because I feel like taking a kicker, and I wanted to do that.
Sauls is a good kicker last name. That's my analysis.
Yeah, no, I've never seen him kick.
He's probably
I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys.
Ball pretty well.
Yeah, I would say he probably knows a thing or two about kicking a ball through a goalpost. I feel pretty confident in that.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, we had it was fun, engaging, interesting 45 minutes. I want to get to Jeffrey's comment before we go out because he said something. I'm not against them bringing in Aaron Rodgers, then getting Jalen Milroe in the draft because maybe then Milroe can watch and develop for maybe a year or two. Yeah, I don't want the circus around Aaron Rodgers. Like I really, really don't want that after the Deshaun Watson situation. But your idea, your premise here, I do like my guy keeps me in Jacoby Brissett. Like I keep going, oh, give me Jacoby Brissett and a rookie. Like that's my guy. But the whole idea, let me get like a veteran so you can take Milroe and let him grow. I can get behind something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Milroe should not be under any pressure to start right away. Like he needs to be treated like a developmental quarterback prospect because that's what he is. And I think if you can do that and you can give him time to learn the game and work on his issues, I think he can be something. And like you see people comparing him to Jalen Hurts all the time just because of, I mean, they have some different similarities in terms of, college path. Like they went to Alabama, there's similar skill sets and everything. But Hurts had some of the same weaknesses that Milroe had. And you can make a pretty good argument that Hurts is not as talented as Milroe is, either with his legs or with his arm. So I don't know. I don't know Jalen Hurts' hand size off the top of my head. Willing to bet it's probably bigger than Milroe's. I don't know how much that's going to make a difference, but there's a path to Milroe becoming a quality NFL starter, and I think, his running ability alone adds a new dimension to your offense, which I think is going to be valuable. So,
yeah, his floor as a runner it's nice. When you're looking at it, trying to figure it out, you're like, hey, his floor as a run. That's like when I'm talking about Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan. I always talk about, I think he's the safest player in this class because his floor as a run defender is high. And it's like, I know Milroe can be an effective runner at the next level. So I know he can at least do some of that I'm at least intrigued by it to potentially give it a try, that sort of thing. So, yep. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up. Make sure you go check out all the stuff going on over at theobr.com. Daily mock drafts Monday through Saturday. I got player profiles every Tuesday. Travis Hunter comes out this week with some film add in there. It was kind of a weird draft for me. I was a little bit all over the place, but that's what we do. We like to just run these crazy simulations and have fun with you guys. So hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight, and we will see you guys again next week. If I can.